This is the Art Marketing Minute with Eric Rhodes, author of the Amazon best-selling book, Make More Money Selling Your Art. In the Marketing Minute, we answer your questions to help your art career. Brought to you by artmarketing.com, the place to go to learn more about marketing. Now, here's your host, Art Magazine publisher, Eric Rhodes.
Thank you, Jim Kipping, and thank you for joining us today. I am here. My goal is to eliminate the idea of the starving artist. So let's get right to today's questions. Here's a question from a YouTube listener who said, I'm a fairly successful artist. I make a good living, and I refuse to do social media. For me, it's a giant waste of time, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as whether or not an artist should engage in any social media at all. Well, it's not an easy answer, because it can be a giant time suck. And it's hard to measure the value unless you do it exactly right, which is something very few people know how to do. Now, a lot of people are posting a lot of stuff and posting progress shots and posting their paintings, but I'm not sure that a lot of people are selling a lot of paintings from it. Once in a while, somebody gets a, hey, I want to buy that painting, but there are not very many people who are actually selling a lot of art. And there's a reason for that. It's because they're not doing it properly. I think it can be done properly. I would refine your question a little bit more by asking, is not doing it hurting your business? You say you have plenty of business. And if that's the case, it's probably not hurting it. But just keep in mind, a lot of people built a business and they have momentum, and then it dries up and it stops suddenly because they're not keeping their momentum up. That's why advertising is important, things like that. But social media can be advertising, and there is advertising opportunity there, but it's a whole different game on social media. It works very well for things where it's click and buy this now, and it's not necessarily an expensive item. So clearly, Facebook, Instagram, etc. are mainstream, and most people are on it. But does it sell art? Well, is it going to get you into more galleries? It might. I mean, there are gallery owners who watch, and they clearly are paying attention to what people are posting to find out what they're doing, whether or not they're bringing them in. It's not automatic, of course. But again, there's a formula. Today, it's kind of like not being in the phone book. In the old days, when people used phone books, if you weren't in the phone book or the yellow pages, they wouldn't remember you. Well, being on the web is more like being a phone book, of course, and I think having a website is absolutely critical too. And it sends a signal if you're not doing it well or if you haven't updated in 30 years. But anyway, a lot of people will randomly learn about you, discover you, because someone may have clicked on or commented on your Facebook, and then they see that and they people pick up on it. But most artists actually don't have many collectors following them. Some do. Most of the artists have their friends, fellow artists following, which is nice, a nice way to be seen, nice way to be social, but it's not necessarily moving the sales needle, although artists do buy paintings, and so that can happen. But you have to know how to do it exactly, and I do hear stories about a few people selling consistently, but not very much. There is one thing to know is there's a false belief about Facebook and even Instagram, and that is that we think that everything we post is being seen by all of our followers. Well, on Facebook, only 2% of the people on average will actually get to see what you post, and that's assuming they see it because they're scrolling through. They might miss it. If you don't have good creative, you don't have good graphics, if you're not saying something interesting, they might buzz right by it. I do that all the time. I'm flipping through, just going fast. So just because it's somebody's feed doesn't mean it's guaranteed to be seen. So what you want to do is, of course, if you're working on business, you want to be in a controlled environment. That's an environment you control yourself or someone that you know and trust controls. A controlled environment to some extent would be email, except you can't control it completely because you might end up on a spam list or you might get no open rates. Advertising, things like art magazines, art newsletters, like some of the stuff we produce, obviously controlled environment. It's going to get out to the right people. But you have to, no matter what you're doing, if you're using it for marketing, there's 3 legs on the marketing stool. And I talk about this in my books and my videos. And that is that you've got to have great attention-getting content or copy. Copywriting is very important. Headlines are very important. And that's true on social media too. You've got to get people's attention. You've got to have a great graphic. And next, you've got to have a great audience. And that is an audience who is the audience that you really need to reach. And then, of course, you've got to have repetition. Any message, in order for people to take action on it, usually has to be repeated and seen by that individual 8 or 10 times, and sometimes over longer periods of time, depending on how much time has passed, because we lose memory of certain things when we sleep. And so in a short period of time, you want to be seen 7, 8, 9, 10 times. In a longer period, it might be 30, 40, 50 times, depending on if you're building a brand or you're trying to sell something in particular. Great content, great copy, great audience, and repetition. Without those things, most marketing will fail. The next question comes from Jan Kobe. It does not say where Jan is, but she says, I used to paint as a greeting card artist for 5 years for the leading greeting card company. I now teach art part-time and am developing a line of card ideas. I would love to freelance for other card companies and share my new ideas, but I don't know how to proceed. I have a list of greeting card companies and art directors all over the U.S., and I plan to send them 5x7 postcards of my best work for consideration. What's your best advice for me to find freelance work? Well, Jan, you must be pretty good. I think that the first thing is to take an inventory of what you already have. You have connections at the big greeting card company. And unless you left on bad terms, maybe they would become your best customer as a freelancer. Have you thought about that? Have you opened that door? Secondly, you're probably in touch with a lot of other greeting card designers, and they probably worked for other companies too, and they know former designers, they know art directors. Maybe ask them the question, can they make introductions? Can they tell you who they know? My guess is that there are probably not a lot of greeting card companies. I might be wrong, but I don't think there are hundreds, certainly probably not thousands. And my guess is that they all have designers on staff, or they all use freelancers, one or the other, maybe both. So why would they buy your designs? What's unique about your designs? You need to come up with a compelling reason to get their attention. This is called strategy. See, mailing postcards is a tactic. What you put on those postcards and what you're targeting and who you're talking to and what your messaging is, that's strategy. Cards are tactics. Now, let's say there are 6 to 10 companies and 6 to 10 art directors. Why send a card? Why not just pick up the phone and call each of them and introduce yourself? It's only 6 people. So if you get a no, you can probably ask a couple questions and learn about the likelihood that you would succeed with them long term. And if it were me, I'd start my own card company. Then the key is getting distribution and being able to afford to print your cards. But you're up against some big guns. So why not create something unique and different, like an online greeting card company? Make it so that they can order online cards through an app and have them auto mailed to the people you want with the messages you want. There are some apps out there that do that kind of a thing. I don't know if they have designs like what you provide, but you could certainly work with apps, or you could do it yourself. My rule is that self-employed is always better than employed. In other words, you're controlling your destiny more if you have your own business. So think about that. Now, being a freelancer is having your own business, so that's a good thing. But you are also relying on other people. If you can rely only on yourself and your great marketing and your great distribution, think big and you can control your own world. Now, related to your question about postcards, I love postcards. They're very effective. Now, they're expensive. They're not as expensive as other types of mail, but you can probably count on, 50 cents or $1 a card, depending on how many people you're sending to. If you're sending to 1,000, it's going to cost you $1,000 or $2,000 for a mailing. And postcards don't typically work without what we call repetition. Now, when I do postcard campaigns, I like to hit people over and over and over again in a few weeks period of time. Every week, every 2 weeks, twice a week. You will grow on them. People will start paying attention. They won't respond immediately, but eventually a high percentage of them will respond. Anyway, I hope this helps. Well, this has been the Art Marketing Minute with me, Eric Rhodes. My goal in life is to eliminate the idea of the starving artist and to help your dreams actually come true. So if you want to submit questions, simply email Eric at artmarketing.com. And to learn more about marketing ideas, you can visit artmarketing.com. Thanks for listening.